The second meeting will be a public hearing. Rules and procedures for making public comments will explain when we get to that meeting. The first meeting is a public work session. The City Council is not in session and no official votes will be taken this evening. This is a meeting in which the public is invited to listen to the questions and comments and discussion by and among the councilors. The public announcement of these meetings stated that the Prattville Autauga County School Committee will be presenting their findings and recommendations. The Prattville Autauga School Committee is not affiliated with the City of Prattville. The City of Prattville did not organize nor sponsor this committee. The City of Prattville did not appoint, suggest, or recommend members to this committee. Anyone attending meetings of this committee did so on a voluntary basis, and only those individuals speaking for themselves could assert as to whether they are committee members or an invited guest. Council rules require a meeting to be called when 2 or more councilors make a written request. 3 councilors signed a letter requesting these 2 meetings be held the same night. Councilors are Councilor Starnes, Councilor Jackson, and Councilor Strichik. Mr. Gray, the floor is yours.
I believe Amy's actually going to start talking and turn it over to her, and then I'll jump in after her.
Thank you. I'm going to start us off this evening just with a few statements. I'm going to start with a quote. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. The single greatest differentiator in our competitiveness as communities is education. Our education system in this community has been our golden magnet for many years. It has drawn and attracted people to this community for decades. With those prized possessions that we all have, such as a successful education system, you must protect it as the most important asset in your community. I grew up personally in Prattville, Alabama, an area with many resources for education, new buildings, new technology, options for understanding careers and electives that broadened the opportunities for me to make choices, and many other options that were available to us with that funding. In my adult life, I've spent nearly 20 years in the education system prior to moving into economic development. And there is absolutely nothing that can transform a person or a community like education has the capacity to do. We owe it to our students in this community to give them the best resources, the best facilities, be ready for the future, be planning for the future. Students in our schools are our future. They are what we should invest in to make our community better every day. I want each of you on the council and in the audience behind me to think with me for just a minute. When's the last time you traveled to another community in Alabama or another state? Just think for just a second. Think about what you saw. Did you see new facilities? Did you see new schools? Did you hear people talking about the new things in that school system? Did you speak with family or friends that explained the great new things in the schools they attended? We have a really good school system, and I think we could all agree with that. But are we okay with only being really good today? Should we not be looking at what makes us great, how we can be the best, and how we can be number one? The complexion of education is changing. We have to prepare every student to be workforce ready. We're in a global society, and we need every child to be the best prepared student that we can have. This state and this community has to be ready and be on the cutting edge to put our community at the forefront of the technological society in which we live in. We have the opportunity to shed a light on education as the most important thing we do as a community this evening. This is a community topic. It is something we must keep top of mind. As your economic developer, I often talk about us being in competition every day with other communities in Alabama, the U.S., and around the world, for business growth and for quality of life and attracting families. Our competitiveness is based on our students and the foundation built for the future in Prattville and Autauga County. I hope we can all make a commitment this evening to put the funding needs of our schools as top priority, to take us to a new standard for our community. I'm going to end with a special quote that I think explains it. Education is the passport to our future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Greg to make a presentation to you.
Thanks, Amy. So you guys are going to ask me to actually walk and chew bubble gum at the same time, so I'll try to do that. Since not everybody knows me, I'm not as known as Amy, let me just take a minute and introduce myself. Most of you I know, but some in the audience I don't. My name is Gregory Gray. I've been a citizen, full-time citizen resident of Prattville for the last 25 years, but really have ties much longer than that. Came to the Prattville in the early 70s, mid-70s with my father. He was a founding pastor of one of the local churches. It was in that local church that I met my beautiful bride of almost 28 years. And yes, she is a Prattville girl, some of you know her. We have 2 daughters, both of which are products of the Autauga County school system. Our oldest just finished her first year of graduate school, and our youngest just finished her sophomore year of undergraduate. We feel very blessed to live here. We love this community. We truly do. You know, with my job, I get the opportunity to travel. You know, Amy mentioned about traveling around the state. I travel around the nation. It usually doesn't take long when I'm traveling that somebody recognizes my accent and realizes that I'm not from there, okay? And so they regularly ask me, hey, where are you from? And so as soon as I tell them that I'm from Alabama, believe it or not, school systems aren't the first thing they ask me about. Can you imagine what they ask me about? It's about football, right? We are known for football. We are passionate about football. I mean, it actually determines how we dress. It determines how we spend our money. It actually determines who we affiliate with, and even in some cases, who we marry, right? And then, unless you're maybe one of those houses that are house divided. From a personal note perspective, when my wife and I were kind of planning our wedding date, I actually had to check the football schedule to make sure it was an open date, right? Because if it wasn't going to be an open date for our team, I would be there alone. There would be no groomsmen standing next to me. So, important stuff. Actually, our anniversary this year falls on opening day of college football. So, chances are most of you won't be celebrating our anniversary with us. So let me ask you to do this. Imagine with me this, okay? It's September 1st, opening day of college football, opening Saturday. You finished your tailgate rounds. You have listened to the band play the fight song. The national anthem has been sung. You are ready. You're excited. And you are just anticipating great things from your team. And then your team takes the field. And that excitement and anticipation turns to confusion and concern. You start looking around and there are players out there that are barefooted. They don't have cleats. There's some that don't have shoulder pads and others who don't even have helmets. And you start talking to those around you. And you're asking them, hey, what's going on? And they're sitting there telling you, hey, you know what? Even the depleted coaching staff, they actually chipped in and bought some of that equipment out of their own pocket. Your team performs valiantly. They truly do. But can you reasonably expect them to consistently compete against teams that are better equipped, optimally staffed, have specialized assistants and facilities to manage? No, we can't do that. We can't expect that. See, those coaches are our teachers. Those players are our children. That's why we're here tonight. Some have suggested that I would be showing up and asking you to consider launching a city school system. Let me be clear. That's not why I'm here. What I'm here to do and what we are here to do is inform you of what we've learned over the last 12 months and also encourage you to take those next steps in getting further information. Because see, these are big decisions that need to be made. And for us to make those decisions, we want to make sure they are well-informed decisions. So I hope that as we go through this conversation tonight, you will learn some things that we've learned. I will tell you, as a non-educator, this last year's been truly enlightening to me. So, our mission is pretty simple, guys. If you look at the mission of this committee, I say it's simple. It's not necessarily easy. All right? Our mission is to be an advocate for our children, for their education, and our community. Simple as that. That's what we're trying to do. If you kind of look at our year in the making, this committee, it was mentioned by Councilor Strickland that, hey, this has not been commissioned by the city, and that's true. I know for me personally, I saw a Facebook post, and I reached out and said, hey, if I can be part of a solution, I'd like to do that. And so I volunteered. And so, man, we've learned a lot over the last year. There's been a lot of people who spent time with us. We really focused our first 6 months was around, man, let's talk locally. Let's understand what people are seeing, what they're feeling. Hey, let's understand what the constraints are. And let's talk about possible solutions. And then really, for the last 6 months, we've expanded that conversation. We started talking to people all over the state. Hey, what are you guys facing? How are you facing that? How are you dealing with that? Talking to administrators within the State Department of Education. Hey, what are some of the best practices? What are you seeing? What are the trends? And so for us, man, that was just, again, not educator. It's been truly enlightening. So I'm very appreciative of the people who have spent time just sharing their insights, sharing their experiences, and sharing their expertise. But they didn't have to do it, but these people were passionate about kids. They're passionate about education. And they're going, hey, man, we're all for you. We want you to be successful. And so that's what we've been trying to do. This is kind of the team that's been together really throughout this. We've had others that have come in and out, and we've had some that have moved. But if you look at the folks that have kind of been involved really since the beginning until now, there they are. And all of them are famous except me. And so therefore I somehow get stuck with making the presentation. But let me tell you this, guys. I value this group of people. I'm going to tell you, and they'll tell you too, we don't always agree. We have difference of opinion. But the one thing I love about what we do, we have a common bond. We love this community, and we want the very best for our kids. And so even when we disagree, it's disagreeing on how we approach something or how we go about something. And so I value them and what they're willing to do. And in particular, I'll be candid. Those of you that are on the team that are elected officials, I truly appreciate it. You could easily have sat on your hands. That's the easy thing to do. But you've chosen to be a part of that, and we're appreciative of that. So, let's talk about something. Let me paraphrase a quote by Patrick Moynihan. He said, everybody is entitled to their own opinions, but not their own facts. I like that. Because see, I like to deal with facts to the extent possible. And let me just tell you, the facts are these. Okay? There are 137 school systems in the state of Alabama, public school systems in the state of Alabama. We are dead last in investing in public education. That's the fact. They're not refuted. That's where we're at. 137 out of 137. And so, we feel like there's opportunity, right? There's some things that we ought to be able to do. So, when we actually zoom out a little bit and start looking at that as we compare in the state, okay? If you look there, Mountain Brook, they invest at almost $13,000 a student. They lead the state. I mean, if you look at the difference, that's a little over $5,000 per student than where we're at in Autauga County. Okay? So when you start looking at these others, Hoover, Vestavia, Alabaster, Madison, Shelby County, Auburn, those are represented really for this reason. We talked to Amy, and she said, those are the communities in which we consistently compete against in economic development opportunities. So we wanted to look, hey, let's look and see how they do education. What is education important to them? So that's kind of the reason they're kind of called out there, is strictly that. That's who we compete against on a regular basis based on direction from our economic development. And so we put that there. The reality is this, guys. We are 137 out of 137 in a state that is one of the lowest in the nation as well. Our school system is funded, in essence, at one of the lowest rates in the United States. That's where we're at. And so that's what we get to deal with. For us to get to average, okay, you see the average number up there, 9,213. That's average, okay? Now, I don't know about you, I'm not real crazy about average. How many of you woke up this morning and go, hey, I'd really like to be average today? Okay? But for us to get to average, to the state average, we need an additional roughly $15 million annually into our current education budget. That's to get to average. And some people may go, wow, that's a big number. But let me suggest to you, it's not without reason. We absolutely can achieve that, in my opinion, and that is an opinion. When you look at median income within the state, 67 counties. Autauga County ranks third. We rank behind Shelby County and Madison County. Let me go back. See those kind of showed back up on that previous slide? They're there, as well as some others. Third, 137 in funding, third in median income. So, here you go. Here's a fun slide. Let me just say this, and there may be some in the audience tonight. This slide right here, this is a testament to the teachers and administrators in our school system. Because I'm telling you, in my opinion, there's no way we would be at number 50 without their dedication and commitment, because we aren't helping a whole lot. Interesting enough, one of the conversations that we had, and it was probably one of those aha moments for me, we spoke with a gentleman who's been a superintendent in a couple of different areas, successful systems. If I named him, you would know him. And he is now a senior administrator within the State Department of Education. And I have to tell you, this was an aha moment, and it's really simple, and it'll tell you how simple I think, because I thought I should have already thought of that. But one of the things he shared with us, and it was kind of took me back, was, hey guys, what you guys need to understand is that your kids aren't just competing locally. They're competing statewide and also nationwide. And you've got to equip them to compete at that level. That's reality. That's where you're at. It is a statewide, nationwide competition. Even in our own state, if you look at our own state right now, the percentage of out-of-state students in the freshman class at the University of Alabama is approaching 70%. It's not there yet, but it's approaching that. Auburn is trending that way. It's actually taking place throughout the country. We're seeing those universities attract out-of-state. There's dollars associated with that, okay? And so think about that. You've got a child. I had one that went through there. They're going to the University of Alabama. They're competing against California, Texas, Michigan, you name it. That's who they're competing against coming into Alabama. So when he said that, it was an aha moment. The other thing, though, is we talked about that. That look, we recognize, man, not every kid wants to go to college. And that's absolutely okay. But many of them want to master a trade. And others want to pursue a military career directly out of high school. And so that's part of this. It's not just about, hey, how many we get in college, but how do we equip them to be successful as they go forward? So, if you know me, again, don't know a lot of you, but I'm not a throw money at it and it's a silver bullet. I don't do that. Okay? There are other factors that come into this. But let me tell you, over the last year, I'm convinced as ever before, it is a factor. Okay? You look at funding, and then you look at the rankings. That's the things we just covered. That's what they look like. And I don't think those are by accident. So there is some level, and I use the term of table stakes, right? And I don't think we're there. And we've got opportunity in which to do that. So, if we boil this down specifically to the city of Prattville and those citizens and businesses in the city of Prattville, we've contributed roughly 11.2, or we do on an annual basis, $11.2 million spread between Autauga County and Elmore County. And you see kind of how that's done through ad valorem and then sales tax. That's where we're at today and just inside the city limits itself and what you have responsibility for. Certainly as we pull that back and look at a county level, you look at that a little differently in those individual counties. But without question, the city and the citizens of the city and the businesses of the city certainly are major contributors in what we do today. So let's talk about some conclusions. Everything I've shared to this point, to the best of my knowledge, have been facts. Okay? We tried to research it, we've talked to people, we've got sources of those. Here's some conclusions that we've drawn from them. So they truly are that. They're conclusions. And we need some additional information. First of all, our teachers and administrators are difference makers. Without question. They're difference makers. There's no way, in my opinion, and I think the committee would agree, that we would be anywhere near 50th without their dedication, their passion, and their willingness. I can't tell you how many I've talked to that says, you know, I put X amount of dollars every year in my classroom. I spend that to do what I believe is right for my kids. Wow, I appreciate that. My kids benefited from that. But let me tell you this, at the same time I believe that we're getting left behind. See, it wasn't that many years ago. We were 129. Now, we were still last, but we were 129, because that's how many school systems were in the state. Every time another school system comes online, we move further to the bottom. We're at 137. Okay. The other thing is, we believe this is a defining moment for our community. And we are absolutely convinced we can do better. Absolutely convinced we can do better. Because time is of the essence. This type of effort, it's absolutely measured in years. Not days, not weeks, but years. The reality is, the kids we have in high school right now, we're not going to be able to help them. We're past that point. And it is also a reality that those in middle school have benefited are in jeopardy. It will matter what we do in the next few days, weeks, whether that comes to fruition and we benefit them. That's where we're at. And that's based on talking to numerous other school systems that's gone through and tried to figure out some of their funding solutions. So, we put this in there. This is just some of the comments that we saw that were coming from the community. There's absolutely others. I'm looking forward to the next part of this conversation that we get to hear from others and their ideas and their questions and things like this. But, you know, these are some of the things that have been shared publicly. Man, there's been countless shared privately. A couple of things that kind of struck me, and these are just recent conversations that I've had. I talked to somebody recently, a professional, moved here, has a job in Montgomery, and really I was sad. They said, you know, we had made the decision when we moved to the area that we looked at it and we were really debating on whether we moved to Prattville or moved to Auburn. And we really made the decision based on proximity, and we said, we're moving to Prattville. And here's what they told me. If I had to do it over again, I'd move to Auburn. I'll drive it. And they have kids in the school system. And it's not a reflection, again, teachers, administrators are absolutely knocking it out of the park. But we're not able to provide the investment that Auburn or other communities are. Another one, actually, long-time, resident here, kids here, they plan to send their kids to private school in Montgomery next year. So that's what we're hearing. That's why we're here. Let's talk about what I think you can do. That's kind of the official request, if you will. But I want to boil it down. Here's my recommendation, hope for you. Be part of the solution. Be part of the solution. Take the steps necessary to get that next layer of information so that any decisions that get made can be informed decisions. These are important decisions, and they're big decisions. Okay? And I also truly believe you have an opportunity to influence the success of our community and our children. Guys, thank you for your time. What kind of questions do you have for me? More than happy to field any from you. We look forward to having some more come from the audience, but I appreciate your hospitality and attention while I've shared a few thoughts.
Thank you. Councilors, any comments or questions at this point? Yes, ma'am.
Do we have an idea of cost for updating our study or conducting a new study?
So I don't have the cost because I don't know. I've read the old study, but we didn't commission it. That's something you guys will have to do. So I certainly think we believe it's got some very good information in it and could be a foundation. We have talked to some other communities about, hey, what have you done? I'm going to give you a broad range because it really depends. And we talk to some of the folks that respond to these things, and they share this broad, right? Because you can make it as big or as small as you want. But, if you're starting from scratch, which we're really not, but if you're starting from scratch, it's probably in a $50,000 to $100,000 investment. Any others?
Yes, it's great, and I know a little bit about it, and some of the committee members, and I do know that we had a couple of others, and you did mention there were some that were kind of in and out, and I do know there was a couple of Board of Education people that were invited that did come to meetings. And I don't know what happened or why it happened, but there seemed to have been a disconnect at some point where those members were no longer coming. And I don't know why, and I really don't care why. Well, maybe I do, but I think it's important, at least from my standpoint, that we have a lot of input from our current education system.
Absolutely.
In this, and not to make it out that there's a bad and good side of this, that we all work together for a common answer, in my opinion. So I don't know if there's anything you can explain on that, or if something we can do moving forward to make sure we do have.
Yeah, so I'll defer to them as far as responding, what they chose to do or not do. I certainly wouldn't want to speculate that. What I can tell you is that we've spoken with a number of former administrators and teachers, and use that as a basis for much of the information that we've gotten as well locally. So again, we got information from current administration and folks that are there, and we're very appreciative of that. But again, I won't speculate. I don't know, right? I can only tell you what I've been part of. And again, we talk about how the committee came about. I volunteered. So that's the extent. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Mr. Mayor, any closing comments for you? No, sir. Councilor Jackson?
No, sir.
Councilor Strichik?
No, sir.
Councilor Starnes?
No, sir.
Councilor Davis?
No, sir.
Councilor Brown?
No, sir.
Councilor Boone?
No, sir.
I do have a few thoughts that just comments, not necessarily questions to be answered, but I too was concerned about the subcommittee versus the committee. And I don't know whether it was press releases from the committee or whether it was the news media, but this has been billed and sold to the community at this point as a grassroots effort. And I'm not sure that's an accurate statement based on the audience tonight. I feel that a presence of the lack of participation from the county and the Board of Education sends a very loud statement to me, and that can be interpreted by many in many different ways. One item that I would like to call to your attention is the author of the 2004 study calls to the attention of the reader. A school system's debt service is not included in the per pupil expenditure, at least in the 2004 study. That raises the question to me, what is included in the per pupil expenditures, and then what is excluded in addition to debt service. So, in the comments of to get to 15 million is quite a few mills. And that doesn't address debt service. So that would be an area of care and concern and investigation. 2004 study also, along with that, did not address school-supported extracurricular events, arts, humanities, sports, and so forth. I don't know whether that's a category that's borne by the per pupil expenditure, whether it's a participant or user paid, or it's an entirely different category. If I understand what you're saying tonight is you're not presenting us with a specific petition, that the findings and recommendations that are printed, basically there are two choices or two comments the way it's written. A new study or updating the previous 2004. If the committee seeks to update the 2004 committee, then essentially that is asking for a funding program for a city school system. Or if the other option is taken, is the committee asking for a study to increase funding for education. To me, these are two fundamentally different questions. One is inclusive of every student that we have. The other isn't. If it is truly a grassroots effort, then I would hope the other partners would come forward and help share the cost of this.
Yeah, so I know those were comments. Let me just try to address a little bit of that. So we absolutely agree. As I shared, we would have to define, and ultimately you would have to commission that. We understood coming into this session, we're not asking you to do anything because it's not an official session in which you're going to vote on a
But the
particular
problem
petition.
with that was what was published was said your findings and recommendations.
Yeah, and so our recommendations are, right, that you consider looking into a new study or updating those. Those are options, right?
Yes.
Ultimately, that is a decision we feel like best sits within the council because, again, you, the body previous to you, sponsored that original study. You're the owners of that study. We're not. So, again, that's our encouragement. Again, we can talk about the logistics of that, but that's the reason we want to be very careful in that and suggest. We believe, just from our own personal readings, we believe that's got some really good data in it. So we think that would jumpstart any kind of conversation and maybe save money in the where we can and be good stewards to the extent we can. So we certainly encourage that. So that's our understanding. Again, I'm a non-educator, but I'm also a non-politician. So I don't know the rules and regs here. I count on you guys for that. And then we'll try to follow that guidance. Okay?
We appreciate your presentation this evening. At this point, we will shift into our second meeting, if that's acceptable. Sir, you have a request?
No, take 5 minutes.
You make a request back now.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a request to take 5 minutes before we start the public hearing, please. Everybody can stretch just a minute and then we'll proceed.
That's fine. The clock in the back of the wall says 6:36. We will resume at 6:41. 5 minutes.